programmatically in there. In fact, they even say it back here because I jumped right over that. So let's see. I don't know. It's in there someplace where they talk about it. Okay. And they also mention again, you can use the question mark to say that something is optional. So again, they show you these patterns here. All right. And as you can see, when you just have slash products, all right, notice the difference. Slash products, plural, is going to give you the list. All right. And if it can have an optional ID component to it. However, slash product, all right, that is looking for a single product. All right. Okay. Now, they again, it gets confusing because they show you in here. They go, "Oh yeah, you can do this. Oh, here's a more flexible way." So there's more than one way of doing the same thing. And thinking about this, I just thought that you at least giving this a try on your own, even if, for lack of better words, if you're kind of fumbling around, but you give it a try, all right, when we go over it together tomorrow, it'll make more sense. All right. At least that was my thought. All right. All right, then finally, as it says here, to insert other segments into a route, yeah, says you can use some of the stuff we talked about earlier in the chapter. And again, if a controller contains methods that are not action methods, it is okay to decorate them with a non-action attribute. Notice what it says. That prevents them from being mapped to a URL. All right. Okay, I'll tell you what, it is 101. Let's take till 115. We don't have much more in here. Let's come back at 115. We'll talk about how to change the routing for a controller, and then we'll go into talking about the best practices for creating URLs. All right, so let's come back at 115, please. I got to get a different water. I'll be right back.
All right, it is 1:15, so let's finish this up. We'll finish up the last 8 to 10 pages, and then we'll take a quick look at what I'd like you to do for tomorrow, and that'll be it for the period then. We're going to do it like this, and if for some reason the way that we're doing this, if this doesn't work for you, just email me and let me know. All right, I'm putting it on you to be working on the case study because I think that's the most extensive thing that we'll be doing, and we'll do some of the projects together. All right. Maybe we'll get to a point where I'll just say, hey, you just do this whole project by yourself. So that's fine too. All right. So as it says right here, it's possible to use attribute routing to override the routing for all actions within a controller. So in other words, if somebody had gone into program.cs and they had created some kind of a route, you wouldn't, I don't think you'd ever want to use this to override the default route, your home and index, etc. But if somebody had gone in there, it can be faster, and some people would say it's a little more self-documenting as well to actually decorate the declaration. That's what they're going to be showing here. Here, the route attribute that decorates the class decoration. So this is put like right up above where you're declaring the controller. This one, as it says, it specifies segments. The first one is static. Well, if you're in a retail controller, retail would make sense then. The second, all right. So the first one is just retail. I guess the second one is the controller. The third, as it says, is the action, and the fourth is an ID. All right. So it's another way that you can do this. What they're saying here is it says, this can actually make it a little bit harder. All right, it says, as with actions, the attribute routing for a controller overrides the default. So again, anything that was set up in program.cs is going to be overridden with this or by this. As a result, it says when you use it for a controller, you can no longer use the default routing actions to request. So you've got to be a little bit more inclusive as far as what you're saying. So as it says, you can't use /product/list because retail was the first thing that we put in there. You'd have to say /retail/product/list. Now, sometimes that can actually be a good thing though. All right, especially if you have, let's say that you set up some kind of a site where you are, I don't know, as an example, that maybe you provide a service where you sell, but you might want to sell differently. Like I said, right there, that's retail. All right. You might have a retail one, you might have a wholesale one. There might be different things that you have in there. All right. So again, notice you can't just say /product now. Since you are decorating this, you are saying that, hey,
you must preface this with retail slash then product, then the action that you want, then an optional ID. All right. And again, you know, when I first read this, my first thought was, okay, I even get this, but why would you want to do that? Then I started thinking about it, and like I said, all right, if you had one thing set up for retail, another thing set up for wholesale, etc., it would bring at least a semblance of order to what's going on in the site. Now, with that said, looking at their example right here with this guitar thing, if I come in there and it's for let's just say it's for some kind of a music store. I'm going to be coming in as retail. I go out to wholesale or whatever, or some kind of a buyer type of thing. You know, uh, I'm probably not even going to be able to get in there to begin with. All right. So again, they give you some examples, and the key takeaway here again is everything starts with slash retail slash product in this particular example. All right. Okay. So the next thing that's in here, and what I'm going to do is rather than spending any time on here, I'm just going to jump right to the next page. They give you about 8 or 10 best practices for URLs. Most of these should make sense. Keep them as short as possible. All right, while still being descriptive and user friendly. Use keywords. All right, make the URLs easy for humans to understand and type. That's one of the reasons when we came in, and if you remember, we made everything lowercase. All right, we want to set that up because you want to make it as simple for somebody to work with as possible. Now, this next one, it's a key one. Use hyphens to separate words, not other characters. Don't ever use spaces, because again, that more or less is along the lines of what we had when we had a query string, and you'd have that percent sign 40 or whatever it was, and that just makes it hard for users. When you look at it this way, that for lack of better words, and I'm not saying the person using the application is stupid, as an example. I don't mean that, but let's just say they're not well informed as far as the arts of things like query strings and the like. You just want to keep it as simple as possible. Now, notice this best practice. Prefer names as identifiers over numbers. But one of the things we talked about earlier is by filling this up with names, if you've got a bunch of segments with names, it'll take longer than if you use numbers, but it'll make it easier for the person who's keying in the URL. Now, they may not be aware that it's going to take longer. And even with this, it depends if if you're Amazon and you're running a that's literally got thousands, if not more, servers all over the country, you're not going to notice any kind of difference anyway. The next two are, to me, are the most important. Create some kind of an intuitive hierarchy. All right. If you're going to be working on this with other people, talk with those other people and say, how are we going to set this up? Get some kind of an agreement. And once you do that, be consistent with it. It may take a little bit more time again for you as the programmer, but it's going to make it simpler for the user. And that's what you're looking for. And again, avoid the use of query string parameters if at all possible. All right. So what they show here, with a number as opposed to a name, this one, yeah, that's more typing, but it's going to let the person, most people aren't going to be able to know that product 1307 is a Fender Special Edition Standard Stratocaster. All right, something like that. Okay. All right. But even with that, notice in here, they're saying, hey, try to make it shorter if at all possible. Now, just to say Fender wouldn't be enough, maybe this, as it is, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe there's a lot of Fender special stuff in there. All right. So you want to change it around even more than that. Now, notice what it says in here again. Or URLs that use query strings. And again, it's recommended that you don't do that. All right. And then they give you four that follow their best practices. and then 4 more that take those best practices and make them even simpler. If you'll notice in there, what they've done is they've removed the use in there of the method that you have to call. All right. And again, I'll leave that up there for a second. You can read that. All right. You know now what a slug is. I never heard this term before. They say that when you use hyphens to separate words, it's called kebab case, because the hyphen is the skewer, and everything that's before the hyphen or after the hyphen, that's the stuff that you would put on for the kebab. I'd never heard of that before this. All right. So of the chapter talks about areas, and I'm going to come back and look at this page, but if you look here, if you go in and you create your own folder called areas, what you can basically do is create a mini project or a project within a project. The example they give here is actually, it's a great example, because what they're saying here is this would be an administrative area. And that would be something that would make a lot of sense, all right, to keep and have in its own holder, so to speak. So here you've got, this is what the world sees, so to speak, the home stuff and the product stuff and the models, etc., the stuff we've been talking about. But this is only going to be available to a select few. So what, at least as far as I'm concerned, it would make sense to do this. And not only that, you're highly encouraged to do this when you're setting up your project. So as it says, the app can have multiple areas. Each area can have, and it doesn't have to have its own controllers, models, and views. It can. All right. But again, if you remember when we did that at the beginning of the semester, when we did that, when we actually set up authorization and authentication, and we had that database that was in there, that very well could be something that you wouldn't want, you might want to segregate that so it wasn't with everything else. All right. And that's what they're saying in here. Again, you read that yourselves, I guess. So, and then they tell you how to set it up. It's really not hard. You create an area by adding a folder named areas to the root folder of the app. As it says, then within it, you set up whatever you want to, need to set up. Now, in order to do that, there's a few things you're going to have to consider. And one of them is discussed down here. All right. It says that to get the views, it includes a layout named admin layout. All right. But you may have to go in and make changes to some of these files that we haven't made changes to so far, because a lot of times under areas, some of the stuff that you're going to get is going to be very stripped down. It's going to be very, very simplistic, for lack of better words. All right. Then finally, as you see in the last paragraph, once you set up the folders and the files for an area, you need to configure the routes for the app, so they include that. It says to do that, you can use the map area controller route method, and I believe they'll show you that also. All right. That's down in here. So notice what they've done is in program.cs, how they've set that up. All right. It's still home and it's still index, but it's the home controller that's inside of the admin area in this case. All right. And notice as it says there, an ASP.NET Core MVC app can have multiple areas. All right. In this example, we only have one. All right. All right. And then finally, because this is, I think it's about the last page that's in here. Yep. And that is how you come in and you associate controllers with areas. Notice before you can use a controller with an area, you must use the area attribute to associate it with a controller. How do you do that? As it says, you decorate the controller with the area attribute, as is shown right here. So it's letting the system know, this controller know, it's associated with an area. With what area? With the admin area. All right. Then they mentioned after you add the area attribute, you can use the area token to specify attribute routing. So you can use a lot of the stuff that we've been using, but you're, for lack of better words, you're kind of digging into it in more detail. So finally, to help you visualize, it says how this works. This is one of the things I like about Murach books. You may like it, you may not. But when they explain something, if they're not going to give you a plethora of code, they give you a table that says, hey, setting it up like this is what you're going to get. All right. And you'll notice all of them begin with admin. All right. In fact, since it's the product controller in an admin area, they all begin with admin, either product or products, depending upon what method in here is being called. All right. Or what action is being called. And that pretty much is it. All right. So I want to just quickly, the last paragraph that's in this perspective, it says here there's more to controllers and routers than what's presented here. For example, you might want to constrain a segment so it only matches certain data types. You may want to map legacy URLs, all right, to a new routing system or other things. All right. And it says when you're first getting started, you typically don't need to know these advanced routing skills, but there's something that over time you might want to take a look at. All right. So let me jump into here. In fact, let's look at them both. So this is Sports Pro. So this is the one I want you to try on your own. As it says, for this assignment, you'll modify rather the Sports Pro website so it uses some skills described in chapter 6. All right. So notice the about, etc. Okay, it's not /home/about, it's just /about. And if you follow what was shown in the chapter, you should be able to do that. So as it says, add an about page like the one that's shown, and it's pretty much what we already have in our about page. They want you to put it in a jumbotron, it looks like, and make the background gray. All right. Then use attribute routing. It says for the app such as shown. So you want to set that up as well. So in other words, I no longer have to put in all of this. I can put in this, and that's what'll happen. Okay. All right. And then that's it for this chapter. So that's what you have to do. It's not really a whole heck of a lot. But for the projects, it's a two-parter. It says for this project, you will build a multi-page data-driven app with multiple routes like the one shown below. So this is the home page. It's an FAQ, or frequently asked questions page, okay? And there's the home page when you select the topic. What does that mean? Well, right here you haven't selected anything. All right, so it's got all this stuff. Then here you have selected something. I don't know what they selected. I was going to say, was it JavaScript? So you'll notice it changes to just JavaScript. All right, this doesn't change. This, that's the same. This doesn't change, but it's your content area that's in the middle here that's changing based upon which of these things here you choose. All right. Here they've chosen C#. Oh, I'm sorry, they've chosen history. Okay. So here's your specs. I don't want to sit and read them to you. All right. They mention when the app starts, it should display that. All right. Then what the home page has, etc. And then they show how the filtering in there should work. Now, I'm asking a lot of you, there's a lot of stuff in here, but I want you to give it a try. All right. And then, as it says for the second part of this, we'll update it to use attribute routing. So you're going to be using some of the decoration. All right. And they even show you pretty much the specs in here, what they want. There's not a lot in that one. All right. So tomorrow, what I'd like tomorrow, I'm just going to start working on this one from scratch. All right. So we'll take a look at this from the get-go, 6-1, and we'll just see how it goes from there. All right. Then Wednesday, I will go over chapter 7 in your book. And if you haven't already noticed it, maybe you have. But for chapter 7, again, as I mentioned, it's a longer chapter. How to work with razor views. As they say there in chapters 2 and 4, we learn basic skills for using them. Now that it's going to be more programmatic. All right. There's things like tag helpers. There's when I say programmatic, it's like ways that you can do looping and some other stuff. All right. So we will do that on Wednesday. All right. And we will go over the entire thing here on Wednesday. Again, it's a longer chapter. It's about 50 pages. It may take most of the period. Then on Thursday, again, for Sports Pro, there's only one thing. That's improving the razor views. Again, I'll expect you to be able to do that one. And for the projects, again, there's only one. It's kind of, I thought, they ask you to build something from scratch. All right. So you'll notice in here, it says you'll build a multi-page one with multiple views, nested layouts, layout sections, a help area, and notice that we're using areas for the help area. All right. And then when you do it, it's not really that it's that big of a thing in here. All right. But you'll notice that's how it's set up. All right. So maybe we'll do that one together. I don't know, on Thursday. And Friday will be our typical no, Thursday, I'm sorry. Yeah, Friday will be our typical lab day. We'll just see where it goes from there. All right. Next week, I'd like to get into chapter 8, and that is basically being able to take controller data and kind of move it around, for lack of better words, make it available to other parts of the program. So we'll take a look at this. All right. Again, there's just one. Why in chapter 9 they have you build a game, I don't know, but they do. And then they have you build another one in chapter 10. Okay? So you can see what's coming up, for lack of better words. All right. So unless you have any questions, we're going to pick it up tomorrow, but I'd really like you to at least give this 6-1 a shot and see what you can do. At a minimum, we'll be going through 6-1 tomorrow. I haven't built it yet myself. All right. I'm going to start on it in just a few minutes. All right. And then if I get that done, I'll go right into 6-2. If you don't have any questions, that's all I had for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.